Hey everyone, it's 10 Types, and today I'm ranking all the decks in Pokemon TCG Pocket. This is a tier list that I found on Tier Maker, so I haven't really looked at this. And yeah, some of the tiers, I'm going to talk about the tiers real quick. It's a little weird. There's a tier 0, and then tier 0.5. Normally tier 0 means that there's only one, like, clearly best deck. And then, so that's like the best deck, right? But then tier 0.5, I haven't actually really heard this term used, I don't think. I've certainly heard like 1.5, but usually use SAVCDF, but obviously those tiers are kind of like subjective, and sometimes people like cut out different tiers and stuff. So um, tier 0.5, I think would also be the best deck because normally tier 1 is the best tier, but sometimes you have things that are a little bit better than that, like super dominant. And so it's like by far the best. So I think tier 0 and tier 0.5 are the same deck, but different variations of the same deck. That's how I'm going to treat it. I'm certainly going to rank the tiers as how good the cards are, or how good the decks are. I've not played with all these decks. I haven't even played against all these decks, I don't think. I've played against almost all of them, though, here, as I didn't make this tier list. I could Dragonize here, but not by itself. Regardless, we have Pikachu EX Substrike. This is the deck I've been playing. It's pretty clearly the best deck. Or I don't know, Pikachu EX is pretty clearly the best deck, right? So if we go to, here we go, tournaments, look at the decks. That's not Pocket. If we go to Pocket here, Pikachu EX is the most played deck, though it's close between Mewtwo EX, and it's kind of messy, to be honest. The Limitless tournament deck thing is a little bit off, but regardless, you can see that it's played a lot. Pikachu EX with Zebstrike, that's the most played Pikachu EX variant, but within. Yeah, so we don't see the Pikachu EX Zapdos list. They pretty much all play Zapdos. I have no idea what Pikachu EX Zapdos is. Like, this one still plays Zebstrika, but regardless, Pikachu EX is the best deck. I've been playing it. I've been able to get it. It's not like super easy to get, but it's not super hard either. You do need Pikachu EX. You obviously need two of that, and then you do really need two Zapdos EX. Then you can fill it out with whatever lightning Pokemon you want. I think Pincurchin's easy to get. I don't I don't remember, to be honest. But you could fill it out with like whatever. You could just put in Zipstrika is easy to get, right? Zipstrika is in every pack. I have like a bunch of them. I think Electrode, Magneton, and Raichu. Wait, yeah, Electrode's in, yeah. So they're all in Pikachu pack. Zapdos is also in the Pikachu pack. Zapdos EX is also in the Pikachu pack. You do want Zapdos EX. Zapdos EX isn't like super strong. It's not bad. It's certainly a solid card. You could play solo Zapdos EX. That's not on here. I haven't seen anyone play it. It's not like super great, but regardless, Pikachu EX is really good. There's 4 builds. I'm gonna pop these all into tier 0. I will be end up moving these though. So you have Pikachu EX, Pincurchin. Oh, okay. So this is like Pikachu EX with. I feel like you usually play Pincurchin. I'm not exactly sure if this is like. So I guess this would be like Pikachu EX, two Pincurchin EX, two Zapdos EX, probably something like that. That's probably fine. I think Zebstrika is pretty good in the deck, and it's not like you really mind filling up the deck space. So if you're playing a list that's like mostly basics, and then you'll probably end up playing some more trainers. So if we take a look, we see a red card, which is not always included, and then which I think is like often not included. This list plays 2 red card. Yeah, this is like the Pincurchin build with Zapdos EX. So I guess Pikachu EX with Zapdos EX is the same as Pikachu EX with like Pincurchin, kind of. It's just like all basics are mostly basics. You could play Zapdos as well, but red card is okay. And what is this? Oh yeah, no, I guess it's like cutting a bunch of cards, but it is running lower counts of basics as well, which can be sketchy. I feel like pushing basics below 7, right? Yeah, because I play. So my list is it's just like the pretty standard Pikachu XF Striker list. It's probably, yeah, it's the exact same as this, I think, and you have 7 basics here. There's still games, so you do miss basics as well, and that's a really big deal. Pikachu EX is, of course, 30 for each bench lightning Pokemon, so you need a bunch on your bench, including after potentially you've gotten knocked out multiple times. If you have 2 single-point Pokemon knocked out, you do need to get 2 Pokemon to replace that, so that's going to be 5, theoretically. I guess you don't need a full bench before. You still do need the 2 knocked out plus, or no, that's 6. You have the 2 knocked out, and then you have your active, then you have 3 bench. So that's 6 Pokemon. That's literally all your Pokemon, but you can get that probably at that point the game's like gone on, and you're generally not getting 2 Pincushion knocked out with a list like this, I gotta assume. But regardless, I do like an extra basic. And red card, I feel like is a pretty mediocre card. Like it is solid. This list plays the single price Zapdos, which it could play. This list does as well. This might be the same list. I don't know. And then this one plays Zebstrika and Electrode and a Pincushion. So I definitely think that Zapdos EX and like mostly basic focused builds are definitely weaker. I'd put it in tier 1. I think it's like the tier 0 versus tier 0.5 are very similar. Actually, I might put this in. No, I'll put it in tier 1. I definitely recommend playing some evolution. Magneton build, I think it's worse. Electrode, I haven't really played. That's definitely one that I am interested in playing. Electrode is really nice because of its free retreat, and so you can just play a list looking something like this. I would probably drop a red card for a Pincushion, but regardless, the deck is pretty solid. Electrode's a solid attacker, though it does have low HP, I suppose. It's not like that much lower than Zebstrika. What is Raichu's? Raichu's is, yeah, it's 100, so it's noticeably lower there. But the free retreat is really nice, allowing for like a really turbo-y focused deck. I feel like you do have X speed to retreat early on, but you don't always have that, right? So getting Electrode is kind of like just another out. So I do think it's a pretty solid variant. I've definitely seen it a decent amount, and it seems pretty good. I'm seeing Raichu as well. I'm gonna put this in here. No, I'm gonna add a Robolo actually, which is just the card sport we're currently the decks we're talking about. Which will be this color, and I'll remove it at the end. Don't skip to the end of the video, though. Sometimes people do that, and they're like, "What is this tier?" So I might leave it in. But regardless, Pikachu EX with a Raichu is pretty good. I don't think it's quite as good. I've seen it some. You can play with Magneton, but we're not talking about the Magneton build. The Magneton build will be playing a Raichu, though. I don't think it's. What is this? Anyway, so you have Raichu, and you could play other stuff as well. I guess this one plays Electrode. You might be playing like Pincushion, probably makes sense in a deck like this. Raichu is not something you can really rely on itself. You have the Lieutenant Surge to move a bunch of energies to it, and this list plays 2 Lieutenant Surge, which I think makes a decent amount of sense. Raichu doesn't one-shot Mewtwo EX really ever. I mean, you could with Giovanni, but then you can't Lieutenant Surge at the same turn. So that's not really something super reliable. I don't really play. I mostly just play Pikachu EX. Pikachu EX is really good, but I did play Mewtwo EX. That's the first deck I got. I was lucky enough to pull that relatively early on, and that deck I never got. I was never really that scared of Raichu. Like, it isn't ideal to be hit by Raichu, and it can cause problems. Raichu can win games, but it's something that's kind of like your last attacker, and it is good in certain matchups. It's good in the mirror, theoretically, as a finisher, or even as your second attacker after first single point Pokemon's knocked out. Then you can kind of hide behind the Raichu, build it up, and your opponent is forced just to take a single point, knocking it out. So it has value. Ultimately, I don't think it's not anywhere near as reliable as the other lists. The Raichu isn't something you'll be using consistently, unlike Zebstrika, which you can use so often. It's really good. Also, I feel like, honestly, Water might be the second best type. I don't know. Like, Psychic is very good, but Water also might be quite up there. So it might be better, but I think the best deck is obviously Pikachu EX, and so being able to hit weakness on Water with something like Zebstrika, which is a very weak attacker, a pretty weak attacker, just hitting weakness onto the active. It is a snipe attacker, but you will need to be hitting the active to hit the weakness. Then you're able to, just get pretty good damage for just 1 energy, which is nice and something you can't get off of Electrode. It's lower commitment. But Raichu obviously is not really taking advantage of that weakness at all. So I think Raichu is going to end up in this tier. It's not a bad card. It definitely can be pretty nice. The list kind of like this is what I'd say is like a normal Raichu list, Pikachu X Raichu list, and you don't lose out on too much, but you lose out on some cards that are nice. You're dropping like, obviously you're swapping out the Raichu, or like a whatever, something Electrode, Zebstrika, whatever for Raichu, but then on top of that, you're adding 2 Lieutenant Surge or 1 Lieutenant Surge, dropping either a Sabrina or a Giovanni or a Potion or whatever. So ultimately, you are sacrificing some things. Then Magneton or Pikachu EX with Magneton, I think you have some, like, I don't know, this deck's, it's not great. It's Raichu, but then it also plays the Magneton, which accelerates to itself. I don't know if it might be its own deck, but I don't really see it on here unless I'm just like missing it. It's pretty sketchy. And Magneton's like Pikachu X is really good. Right? I'm not going to sit here and say that it's a terrible deck with Magneton. It's definitely not one I'd recommend, though. Magneton's a card that if you're getting it, you probably have Zebstrika. Just play Zebstrika. And its attack is not very good. It's pretty weak, obviously, for its energy cost, though you can build it up, and in some ways it is kind of efficient, I guess, because it is. You could view it as like free over the course of a bunch of turns, and with that mark, it's solid, but it's not like insane. I mean, I guess if you view it as like a free attack doing 6, it's really good, but you are sitting on the bench a while. It's ultimately a card that has decent upside because you can do Lieutenant Surge Link to Raichu, but that's a big ask. It's like Lieutenant Surge Link to Raichu with just the Raichu without Magneton is hard to do. I think this is definitely not something I'd recommend. I'd say it's a tier 2 deck, and something at that point you're actively hurting your deck because you're playing a bunch of different things that are often not getting you too much value in games that you just like win the game first with Pikachu EX. Then we have I guess I'll talk about the last Lightning deck. I have no idea what this is. I mean, it's like Electros, but I've never seen anyone play this Electros. Yeah, okay, it does 80 paralysis on a coin flip, has 140 HP. Like, its stats are okay, but I would like don't play this. Right? I mean, I don't know why you'd play this deck. I haven't seen anyone play it. It doesn't seem like it has super high upside. If you get super lucky, if you get like decently lucky with the coin flips, then you also get lucky to set up. I guess it could be solid, but play not this. There are definitely better decks that are cheap. This is in the Mewtwo pack as well, so you'll definitely need to kind of work towards it to get it, and it's not very good, right? So don't play that. Then we'll talk about Psychic next, I guess. That's not Psychic. Oh, there are 2 Dragonite builds. Anyways, so we have Psychic. We have Mewtwo Gardevoir. I think it's tier 1. I think it's worse than Pikachu X Pincurchin. It's pretty good. It's not bad at all. It's not broken either. It is the top played deck when not combined. It's one of the top 2 decks and plays very clearly above all the other decks, but I think it's pretty clearly below in terms of like the power level of Pikachu EX. It doesn't set up super well. It has inconsistencies a lot, and in terms of its highs are lower than Charizard EX, so it's in the middle. It's not a terrible deck. It's a good deck. It's one that's probably been talked about a bunch, but isn't anywhere near as interesting as Pikachu EX in my opinion either. Could pop in different decks like Jinx, Kangaskhan, Fossils, just whatever. Let's see what we have here. No tech here. You got a Mewtwo here, which is okay, but I haven't been attacked by it. I've seen it played down, but it's awkward to get set up because you can't be applying pressure with the 50 damage attack. So I don't think it has super high value, and then looks like a good chunk are playing Mewtwo. You have Jinx. I think Jinx is solid. Definitely can apply some pressure in the early game, but ultimately, I wouldn't play. If I was playing it, I'd just play it without any other tech Pokemon. We see Kangaskhan. I've seen like a decent amount of Kangaskhan lately. Apparently, a lot of people are playing the Mewtwo. Some are playing the Jinx as well, but ultimately, it's a solid deck. Certainly not a bad deck, but I think it's noticeable. I mean, it's a good deck, but I don't think it's like broken. If it sets up and you're not playing a stage 2 deck, even if you are, then you might not set up. But if you are and you do set up, you probably beat Mewtwo EX. I don't know. I guess like with Venusaur EX, it's not like guaranteed to beat it, but regardless, it is a good deck, right? It is a good deck, but it's not Pikachu EX. Alakazam, I haven't really seen Alakazam. I've definitely heard talk about it. It is played some. Apparently, its win rate is not great. It's pretty bad, I guess. I mean, like, it is bad. No, actually, it's quite bad. I was going to say, like, a lot of decks win rates aren't great, but it's really bad. So, Alakazam, you can do solid damage, but it is 3 on the stage 2. You don't have acceleration. I mean, you could, but you really don't. So, ultimately, it's a card that is pretty sketchy. I'd say it's off meta, not something I'd really recommend playing, not something that I've played or seen much because it's not very good. Its upside's pretty mediocre. You could be swinging in with you could have your Gardevoir up, and you probably have a Mewtwo EX. Like it's not great. So yeah, I'm trying to think of other stage 2s that are good that are single prizes. I mean, Dragonite. Dragonite's only one more, and you might just win the game if you attack with it like once. So, this is not a terrible attacker, but it's not really good enough in its current state. Maybe we'll get support for it, but right now we haven't seen too much specific support. We've seen some specific support, of course, something like Koga, but it's just not that good. Then we have Gengar EX. Gengar EX is definitely one of the weaker EXs, doing 100 for 3. You could play with Gardevoir. Honestly, like whenever I see it, it sets up. But I feel like that's just like lucky. Like I was playing a game, turn 3, my opponent had a Gardevoir EX, or no, a Gardevoir, a Mewtwo EX, and a Gengar EX, and like they were knocking me out with like Farfetch. It was like crazy. But that's obviously not super consistent. Gengar, win rate, it's not good. Win rate isn't everything, but ultimately it's a card that, the supporter locking is like kind of good, but it's not super good. There are a lot of times when it's kind of mediocre. You do have high HP, that's really the best thing about you, but if the Haunter did a little more, like maybe 50 for 2, I think it would be noticeably better. But it doesn't. It does 30 for 1, so you're applying very little pressure there, kind of relying on Giovanni for pressure in the early game, which is kind of sketchy. Pidgey is like really weak in Pidgeotto, so ultimately your attackers are just quite weak. And Gengar EX is weak for a stage 2. It's a not great deck. It's off meta. I'd say it's better than Alakazam. Like you can kind of like tank hits in the way that you can't do with a lot of other decks, but it's still not great. And we'll talk about the water decks. We have a good few here. I'll save Dragonite for later, but let's see. We got a bunch of Starmie decks. These are kind of like mixing and matching. I'll talk about Articuno EX first, I suppose. Articuno EX is a pretty good deck, right? Like it's not insane. It's really boring and it's really reliant on coin flips with Misty. If you flip double tails on Misty, you probably lose, to be honest. If you flip one heads, you're certainly in it. I mean, if you flip tails on Misty, you're not instantly out. You're also like not like Hand Scope's not a super good card. Like honestly, most of the trainers in this deck are pretty. A lot of them are kind of mediocre. Like because you're such a linear deck, you don't get as much value off of really any of them. You can only use cards in very specific ways because you only have one Pokemon. But it's a solid deck. It's not a bad deck at all. It's one I see a lot. It's not the best deck. I think it's tier 1. A lot of the like decks that people play are going to end up being put in tier 1. I do think it is tier 1. It's not broken and can't really beat something like Pikachu EX and Mewtwo EX. You need to kind of get lucky in the early. You could beat Pikachu X if you get very lucky, but you do need to get lucky, or they get like quite unlucky. But it's a solid deck. It can definitely beat a lot of just random decks because they might not set up, or because just various reasons. Then you have Starmie EX, the different builds of that. I think Starmie EX, Articuno EX. I guess this is just those two because you probably play Articuno EX and the other decks as well. But this is a tier 1 deck. I think actually no, I'll say the Articuno EX deck is tier 2 because of its limited nature. Starmie EX, Mewtwo EX, well, no, Starmie EX, Articuno EX can do more. Starmie EX is a pretty good attacker. It does have free retreat. It's just a pretty solid Pokemon. It's pretty good. And you have more options, which is very good. And so it's a deck that has some solid things going on. It's kind of just like objectively better than Articuno EX, a little less consistent, and you can't necessarily go for those like turn 1 insane plays, which is like a small percent chance that you just get a donk or something. But that's not happening very often. So it's a pretty good deck. And then have the Golduck build. I haven't seen this too much. I've been seeing it more lately though. It's definitely a deck that's solid. I don't know where this deck is. Starmie EX Golduck. Okay, here it is down here, but there might be some other decks including it as well. So I'm playing the single Pars Articuno, or single point Articuno, not the EX, which is kind of interesting. But regardless, this is a deck that I've been seeing some lately. It's definitely, it's solid. It's not insane. I mean, Golduck's kind of similar to Starmie EX, but it has less HP and does less damage, right? But it is a single point Pokemon. Psyduck's kind of cool, and the basic has more HP, which is quite nice. But ultimately, it's solid. I think it's definitely tier 2. I don't think it's bad, but I don't think it's to the level of the other top decks either. It's not what I'd recommend. I'd recommend another build. And Starmie EX with Greninja. This is definitely a deck that really interests me, and I've seen it some. I've not played it. Again, the main decks I have played are Mewtwo EX, Pikachu EX, and then a few others that I'll talk about that are a bit more rogue or early game or things like that. But I think Greninja is definitely a really cool Pokemon, allowing you to do extra damage. And you kind of like need to buy time or get lucky, right? So you're setting up a stage one and a stage two, and that's kind of hard to do. But Greninja does have really solid value, and it's kind of hard to play around with like potions and stuff. You kind of can, but it's harder. And so it is pretty good. Storm EX's damage output's low, so Greninja isn't turning things into just one shots all the time, but it is still pretty solid. I think it's tier two though. I'm gonna put it right here. The tiers are ordered in case you didn't know. So it's a little better than Pikachu Magneton, a little worse than Articuno. Yeah, that seems pretty fair. Then we have Blastoise. I have not played that again, but I played against it. It's like some. It's not. Where on earth is Blastoise? Blastoise isn't very good. I'd say it's not like terrible, but it's not that good. It's definitely in the off meta tier. I don't really know where to rank these decks in the tier cards of decks. I think it's definitely worse than Gengar EX. I guess I'd say it's like the bottom of these three so far. But as the tiers get lower, the rankings kind of matter less. Then we'll talk about grass next. I think you have some. I could have talked about fire. Fire is probably the next best type, but whatever. We have in grass, you have a bunch of Venusaur EX builds with a lone executor. I think a lone executor, or no, executor EX with Butterfree is okay as well. Beedrill, I've been like, why are you playing Beedrill? It's a stage two with that does 70 and doesn't have great. It is not very good, right? So I've not seen anyone play Beedrill ever. So yeah, I would not recommend Beedrill. I don't really know what you're doing with that. It's kind of weak. Venusaur EX with Executor EX, you got. I think the Butterfree build's kind of good if you set up. It's arguably the best deck in the game. I suppose. I guess like Charizard EX would be better. Is it just one shot and everything? But this deck is kind of good, but kind of hard to set up. I think it's probably in the off meta tier. I think they're actually no. The Executor EX I think is a really good card. Pop this in tier two. I mean, it's a good card. It's not insane. Like grass is definitely not the best type. It's pretty far from that. I think Lilligant is also solid. I'll actually put the Butterfree one in off meta. I think it has the highest ceiling, but it definitely is a deck that is hard to set up. And then I think the Executor EX list would be like somewhere around here. I could see, yeah, that seems fair. Then Lilligant is okay, helping you set up Venusaur EX, but with Venusaur EX, you're kind of like stalling with the Pokemon in the active, hoping to buy some time and not like and just manually attached to Venusaur EX. You need to attack with Lilligant multiple times to really get value out of it, and that's not necessarily happening consistently. So I think Lilligant ultimately is a card that is cool, but has some serious flaws. Then we talk about Fire, and Charizard EX Moltres EX is a deck I see all the time. It's one of the decks I'm working towards getting. I think I'm not super excited to play it. It does depend some on coin flips, but mostly on card draw. Like I pretty consistently see the deck flip one or two coins, which is what will happen most of the time, but I almost always see that happen. I've almost never seen three or zero heads, but regardless, it is a solid deck. It is probably a tier one deck. It's not. I mean, when it sets up, it's insane. It wins, right? You can't stop it. You can't one-shot it with anything. I mean, there might be some things, but they're pretty niche. And then you have really strong damage. And so that's really good, right? It's a very strong attacker. Once you set up, Moltres EX often like gets knocked out early game, so you need to kind of win with the Charizard EX. You need to draw into that. It's a little luck based, but it is a solid deck. And then you have the Blaine's deck. The Blaine's deck's pretty good. What is the Blaine's deck called here? Here we go. Ninetales Rapidash, and it's solid. Its win rates. It's just not great, but it's not terrible. And then you can do good pressure. Ninetales is a good attacker. Discarding the energy is not bad. I think Ninetales is definitely a pretty solid deck. I'll probably put it in. Let's see. I think it's. I almost want to say tier. I'll say tier two. I'll say it's tier two. It's a solid deck. Then we have Arcanine EX, Moltres EX. This is one I definitely don't have too much knowledge on. I think it's okay though. It's not like completely terrible. I don't think Arcanine EX is like completely terrible. Where is it? Arcanine EX. Okay, here. Oh yeah, that's higher than I thought. So in terms of like looking at its win rate, it's pretty good. I don't think it's like as good as its win rate suggests, but it is a card. It is a deck that has solid value. Like your damage output's not great, right? You're only hitting 120 and you're damaging yourself, so your stats are kind of mediocre. And you're like at stage one, so you're harder to set up than a basic, but easier to set up than a stage two noticeably. So I do think it is a viable deck. I'll put it on the bottom of like tier 2. Oh, no, I'll put it in like the middle of tier 2. It's okay. It's okay. We got, let's see, fighting. We'll kind of just like breeze through these decks. Most of these aren't very good. This is a Brox. I mean, I've not really seen it. It seems pretty bad. I guess I'll put it in off meta, but it's not great. Then you have Kabutops. What does Kabutops even do? I don't remember this card. I've never seen anyone put it into play. This is a stage 2. It's fossil. It's a big mess. Okay, yeah, you heal. This card seems really bad. You can heal. You heal the same amount you did, which seems like kind of fun, but you're probably just gonna get one shot in. I guess it's good against Pikachu EX, but not something I'd recommend. And then you have, I'll put it in the bottom of off meta. Then you have Machamp EX. Machamp EX is pretty sketchy. I guess it's one of the better off meta decks, but it's not that good. I'm gonna go with the Marowak decks. Marowak is it's okay, I suppose, though it's definitely in the off meta deck category. Probably here. See, no, here seems about right. No, there we go. It's whatever. You have modern value. You are relying on coin flips, and you can definitely had serious issues with that. And the upside's like okay, it's not bad. It's kind of good, but it's kind of luck based. And then same thing with obviously Dugtrio, also a coin flip Pokemon. I think this is probably better than Marrow. Is it? I don't know. It's pretty similar to Marowak. And then Marowak Sandslash is the beginner deck. It's probably like, yeah, I feel like it's like the beginner deck. And you don't necessarily have all the cards right off the bat, but you have most of them. And so I'd say it's probably like here. I don't know. The Marowak decks are okay. Then we have the Dragonite decks. Dragonite Frostmoth is okay. I don't know. It's not that good. It's pretty bad, but it's funny, So I'll pop it here. I honestly think just like straight Dragonite might be the best way to play it. Dragonite Weazen's also good. I think this is the top off meta deck. I don't think it's quite viable. It's completely terrible, but when you set up, you just kind of win. It's a pretty fun deck, so I'll put it here. I think it's okay. I'll drop it down one. Then we have the Darkness decks. We have Nidoqueen, Nidoking, and that's probably pretty bad. I haven't played it. I haven't played against it. I don't think anyone's like set it up. If they have, yeah, Nidoking is which one's which? Nidoking is the attacker. Are they both attackers? Oh, so Nidoqueen is the one that does more for your benched. So it could hit insane. And then Nidoking is like the regular attacker. Has more HP. I mean, they're both stage 2s. You just need to manually attach a bunch, and their upside is pretty bad for the what is it, like the family Pokemon or whatever it's called, with like the challenge. That might be the thing. The family Pokemon might be a different set of Pokemon, but regardless, they are not great. And then you have I guess this would go in the same tier. Oh, that's not, what is that? Okay, that's Wigglytuff EX. I think Wigglytuff EX is like kind of funny. It's like the stall deck, but it's obviously not that good either. Just wondering, are the tournament decks? No, they don't show up here. So Wigglytuff, where is this? Here we go. It's 17, and it's not like terrible. It's not great. I'd say it's probably in the off, like near the upper end of off meta. I know some people think it's pretty solid, so I'll put it up here. Then I'll put it actually up here. Then we have the Arbok Pidgeot deck, which I think is, oh no, let's close these. Arbok Pidgeot is pretty sketchy. Like theoretically, you can do some pretty crazy things and just get really high value, but I think it's pretty hard to set up. Your damage output's low, so it just kind of depends what your opponent's setting up. There are times when it's pretty good, but a lot of the time it's kind of bad as well. I think it's definitely in the off meta tier yet again, like a lot of these, and that'll end up. It's one of the better off meta decks. I'll put it here. And then you have Arbok Weezing. Arbok Weezing is honestly like a very viable deck. It's like a tier 2 deck. I'm gonna put it right here. It's not great win rate. It's we don't oh, that's not that bad. It's not great, obviously, but it's not that bad. You have like Koga. Koga's a really good card with Weezing. You can do some really cool stuff there. So I think it's a solid deck. Then the metal decks, honestly, Melmetal, with Hypno, I've not seen. When I see Melmetal, I don't even remember. I think I saw like Melmetal and Mishap, but regardless, Melmetal is a cool card, one that I kind of want to mess around with at some point. I don't have it. Hypno Melmetal, here we go. I don't know why this is the one. Its win rate's not good, but it's only been played by a few people. I don't know. This seems like something that I wouldn't play. And then you have Mawile, just Mawile. And that's with, yeah, Melmetal is, well, I guess. I mean, Mawile's like not a super strong Pokemon. It's not a terrible Pokemon though. Oh, wait, on full screen. It's an okay Pokemon with like moderate value. If you get lucky, it's like pretty solid, but you need to get lucky. So I'll say it's in the like somewhere in the off meta tier, like right around here. Then Bisharp. Bisharp's like whatever. It's it's like Golduck or whatever. So it's okay, but you lack the upside of something like Golduck with all the other stuff that supports it. It's definitely not a deck I'd play. It's not completely unviable, I guess. But regardless, here's my tier list. Obviously, Pikachu X, the best deck. It's pretty clearly the best deck. You can play various different versions of it if you want, but overall, I think the bet is okay. Like these tier 1 decks are playable. These tier 2 decks are also playable. By the way, the tier 0 and tier 0.5, it's Pikachu X, right? So tier 1 I think are like the best decks, but if you're playing these tier 2 decks, especially these upper tier, I don't think any of these decks are like bad decks. I think they're definitely all right. But anyways, tell me what you think. What decks do you like down below in the comments? But I hope you enjoyed. Consider liking, subscribing, hitting the bell, joining the channel, all that good stuff. And as always, Mike said, see you in the next video.